Welcome to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tails, your weekly livestock podcast, and as always we'd like to thank our sponsors Harborough for their continued support. So we're going to profile the Scottish beef event. It'll be the first one to be held since the COVID pandemic, and it's going to be in Dumfries on the Dalswinton Estate, a large estate there owned by Peter Langdale, and I'm very fortunate to have Peter on the phone having a chat to us this morning. And Peter, a 5,000 acre estate, I believe, and that's been in the family for quite a while.
That's correct. We've just over 100 years. My great-grandfather bought it in 1919, having made his fortune in the Far East, and then came back in 1919 after the First World War and bought the estate. And we're very lucky. It's a lovely place.
And well, I've had a look at your website there, which I'll make sure that our listeners get to see your website. An excellent website, I have to say, and it gives a little bit of information about what you do on the estate, which seems to be quite a lot, I have to say. You must be a busy guy doing all those things. But we're focusing at the moment, anyway, on your suckler herd, which is going to be sort of prominent at the front end of the Scottish beef event.
Yeah, I think the land itself lends itself to a big beef operation. We go from the river where we have some very fertile arable land, which we also grow silage on, and then we go into some nice permanent pasture, and then as we go further and further up to the side of the River Nith catchment, we end up on hill ground. So we're farming about 2,200 acres, something in that range, and we're utilising it largely with beef, but we also have bed and breakfast sheep that come on as well.
Yes, they're always handy, those things, especially on the lower ground. And we focus on the sucklers. I think, as I said, 550 sucklers, farm manager that runs that side of it, I think. But they're mainly native bred cows. I think there's Angus and Lings, I believe, and a bit of Shorthorns and native bred females.
Yeah, so if you start at the sort of on the hill ground, we have 60 lings up there, and a few blue greys, which we like, but the lings have got a really good temperament, and then we put them across the shorthorn, and that gives us a nice cow, which then is put across an Angus, and that Angus shorthorn mix is really what I would call a Dalswinton cow. We keep it quite small. It's very wet in Dumfries, and the ground can become very poachy, so anything too big is a problem. And then we finish with a Charolais. So the Charolais goes over that Angus shorthorn, and that gives us our final stock, which is quite what's consistent in size and grows pretty well, and also we've managed to calve quite well as well, so it's good, and a good temperament. We really like a good temperament. Okay, but the cows, I gather from that then, you do run a self-replacing herd then, so you're mixing these up all the time. It can be a bit complicated. Yeah, we are. Yep. No, it can be complicated. Every now and again we have a rush of blood to the head and put a bit of Simmental in, which we've got at the moment, okay. And then things get a bit big, but so it's good though. We end up with a nice product at the end. And at the Scottish Beef Event, and I should announce it actually, is on Tuesday the 6th of June. Will the animals be there on show? Will there be sort of all the animals penned up for people to see or wander around the fields, I guess, this time of year? We can't take everyone around everything. We actually, the first time the Scottish Beef Association with Scott Henderson came here, we had an idea where we were going to go, and 3 hours later we ended up back at the steading, so we decided that was too far. So we're doing a shortened farm tour, but there will be different mobs of cattle in each field that people go through, and then the breed societies will be at a farm which is quite close but not where the main event is, so people get a feel for how the whole farm works. Okay, that sounds brilliant. And just going back to those cattle a little bit, you say you use the Charolais bull as a finisher, so do you put these away at stores or do you finish any of the cattle yourself? We don't at the moment finish any of the cattle ourselves. I think it's a key question for us going forward, so we put them away we hope to get them away between 10 and 12 months, and we hope to get the steers away over 400 kilos, and the heifers are weighed over 375 is what we're aiming for. So,
do they go into a local sale or an on-farm sale, or do you have people come and buy them privately?
We at the moment we've been selling a lot through Sterling, and then we have a couple of private purchases as well. So I think a key for us, Andy, is as we enter this change in subsidy and what's going on, how we marketing our cattle is really a key question for the business. And so if we're doing a lot of work, which we are on our carbon sequestration position and also the biodiversity position and how all of that is playing out, how do we then turn that into value? And that's very difficult if you're selling store through the market. Okay. So that is a key question we've got to try and answer. And
not just yourself, a lot of other people as well, which is why these events are so useful, because everybody gets a little bit of an input into this and we all learn and take something from it. And if I go on to the climate change side of it, and a lot of focus has obviously been putting on that now recently, and I'm assuming, well, I know the beef event is taking a good deep look at the whole the farmer's responsibility, I suppose, within that space, and that's something you've taken very seriously yourself.
Yeah, I think as a beef farmer, and then two, as a reasonable sized landowner, we have to look at it very carefully. And I do actually think in our lifetimes, or my lifetime, we have seen a big change in the way in which land has been used, and there is undoubtedly biodiversity lost, and a lot of that has been driven by subsidy. So we've been farming ground pretty intensely that has been taken out of probably quite good biodiversity 40 years ago, and has been put down into agricultural ground. Agriculture absolutely is key to this estate and is key to a lot of land. So we've taken a look at it. I haven't got the answers, but I'm pretty sure that in order for us to have a sustainable business in the future, we've got to improve what we're doing currently.
Okay, and much of the analysis, of course, is being put onto the carbon footprint of the suckler cow, which you're key to there, and that'll be highlighted, I guess. And I suppose that is versus trees, because we're seeing trees coming in now, supposedly coming in there as better carbon producers. And do you have either side of the fence argument for suckler cow versus trees?
So I think trees is too simplistic an approach. So I think everybody who wants to put the land into trees could be creating an equally big mistake, and it all depends what trees and where they're going. But there's plenty of land that should be back to meadow. There's plenty of permanent pasture which should be back to permanent pasture and not be ploughed up. Some of that permanent pasture is excellent ground, and there's no reason why that can't contain carbon. So I think we have this one size fits all, and it's very dangerous. And what we have to do is try and understand what fits our system best, and then from that, how are we improving our operation? So that we're doing a number of different things, but our carbon sequestration is reducing on the beef enterprise, and our biodiversity improvement is going up. Actually, the more efficient you become, the better you become at carbon sequestration and biodiversity improvement. So the whole thing is linked, and it's trying to understand how that works is really important. So we could easily, on the estate, turn around and say we are a net contributor to reducing carbon. So all we have to do is lump in our forestry, and that would be a mistake, because that's been there forever. So the question is, how are we improving our suckler herd? And that's a much more difficult question to answer. And we've got to do it if we're going to remain relevant to the consumer.
Okay, yeah, that's wise words. And biodiversity, of course, covers a massive subject. It isn't just animals and livestock, as you said. It's trees and flowers and streams and properties as well. You have a lot of properties on the estate there, and I think you sort of take everything that works within your estate is taken into account for the biodiversity improvement.
Yeah, and again, they all have their own challenges and therefore opportunities. So the village itself is a carbon contributor because they're not very well insulated and they're old listed properties. So we have to take a long, hard look at those, and it's exactly the same thing. What are we actually doing to improve those? And actually, should we be improving those? Should we just take it that those properties aren't great? There's no way you should knock them down. It's complete madness to knock them down. They're listed and they're very beautiful. So what it is that we should be doing is more difficult to answer.
Okay, and I note that you have wind farms there as well, something that's been in for probably 20 years or so now there, and the wind farm, is that one part of the answer?
So, wind farms, massive generators of income for land. It's been a great bonus for the estate. I don't think their biodiversity track record's very good, so that's across the piece. So the renewable industry has to do a lot of work on improving its track record on biodiversity. In terms of reducing carbon, they've done a great job, obviously, but in terms of biodiversity, there's definitely work to be done there. So we've been lucky. They came in. We actually started the process way back in 1997, and the first electricity was generated in 2008. So that's been very helpful to the estate.
Okay, and also on the estate you have a wedding venue. You said you've got businesses on there. I think you've even got a distillery on there somewhere, or certainly a sort of part of the whiskey. And that's reused a lot of the old buildings there, been reused for a more modern cause.
Yeah, Andy, I think that is interesting. I think, well, there are a lot of farm buildings dotted all over the countryside, and a lot of those farm buildings have got uses, and you have to work hard at understanding what those uses are, and I hope a lot of people come on the 6th of June. You also have to work hard at creating an environment which people are happy to come into, so that the whiskies are very good. It's not a distillery, it's actually a bottling business, and there's a couple of young guys who approached us just before the pandemic, and they've done a terrific job, and they've created a business out of there. They worked incredibly hard through the pandemic on Zoom calls, attracting people to come and buy their product, and as a result we've got a thriving business there which has done really well, and we've got other businesses. We've actually got a McCormack tractor engineering business which he's done brilliantly. So working with these guys to try and improve the diversity of the estate is definitely something that we need to work at as agriculture goes through what I think is a seminal change at the moment.
Absolutely right, and I think some of those things will be on offer, and I mean it is a real community that you have there as Dalswinton, with, as you said, with the houses and the village and everything going on there, and it's great to see that you're doing such a job. Peter, I know you're a busy man. We will look forward to seeing you on the Tuesday the 6th of June, and I'm hopefully going to have a chat with the chairman of the Scottish Beef Association to find out a little bit more about what will be going on there at that Scottish Beef event. So Peter, thanks very much for taking the time to talk through that with me.
Great, thanks Andy, and I hope to see you at the event.
Thank you, Peter. So I've now got on the podcast Scott Henderson, who's the chairman of the Scottish Beef event. And Scott, are you also chairman of the Scottish Beef Association?
No, the chairman now is a chap, Paul Ross, who comes from Orkney.
Okay, but the Scottish Beef Association are the body that are sort of behind the Scottish Beef event, I guess. And what actually do they do at the Scottish Beef Association?
We are lobbying on behalf of beef farmers, beef farming members.
Okay.
Government, particularly Scottish government.
And as I said, they are behind the Scottish Beef event, but you're the chairman of this event, the first one, I think, since COVID there. And is there quite a crowd of you organising this event, or is it just a small core?
Well, it was challenging because we started in 2020.
Right.
Getting the venue was almost the same day as the COVID lockdown started, so we couldn't have timed it worse or better. I don't know what way you want to do it. I mean, I have great praise for Peter Langdale, because he was in at the start. He's never faltered. No, I mean he's stuck with us. I mean, we've had 2 or 3 false starts before finally felt confident enough to go ahead and plan it for just over in a month's time. Okay, and I suppose that probably did give you a little bit more chance to work a few things out, maybe you had a couple of with the false starts there. And normally the Scottish Beef event, is that an annual event every year or every couple? No, it takes biannually with the Scotch sheep.
With Scotch sheep, okay, fair enough.
So there's a sheep event one year run by the Scottish Committee of the NSA, and then we were falling into the year in between.
Okay, and these events are very specialist, aren't they, compared to just a day out at the Highland Show or Dumfries Show, what have you? These are actually specialist events, not just aimed at people coming of a day out there. It's a lot more than that, isn't it?
No, it's very, very much aimed at beef producers, and very much so. Particularly this year, I mean, we have a very gentle rollout of what the support's going to be like going forward, and we're trying to focus people's minds on things that they could do which would help their businesses going forward.
Sure. And I spoke about this with Peter Langdale earlier at Dalswinton there. It's a huge estate and obviously a lot of things going on. But I mean, he talked about the sort of farmers' responsibility for the biodiversity and looking after the countryside. Is very much a sort of role they've got to take on. Is this something you still need to educate a lot of people with, or do you think most beef farmers are sort of on board with that now?
Very much a work in progress. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are people who are taking this already to hand, and it's what they've been striving for over the last few years. But now we need to bring the vast majority of beef producers forward and take all this into account. I mean, if we're going to reduce our carbon footprint as beef producers, what one or two producers do is not going to help the country. It may well help their businesses, but I think our aim of this event is to show producers that in taking on board sustainability and carbon reduction, it's also going to reduce your costs, make your business more efficient, and drive the industry forward. And that's very much our theme for this event: is come along, see what's available, and see what would suit your business.
Certainly, that's what Peter said. I think by being more efficient, you naturally will reduce your carbon footprint as well. So it's a win-win. And Peter said sort of what went on there at Dalswinton, but what can people expect to see when they come to this event? There's quite a few things going on there as well as just walking around and kicking the tires on trade stands, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. I mean, we've very much centred on carbon reduction, and there's going to be many different ways. Well, there are many different ways in which beef producers can embrace this and drive their businesses forward, reducing their costs, making them more efficient, and ticking a lot of boxes that the Scottish Government would love to see agriculture doing.
I know there's been a schedule put out for the event, but if you could just run that through me again, roughly, there's going to be seminars. Who do we have speaking to the farmers here? Who are the high-profile people that are going to be discussing this?
Well, we've 3 thought leadership seminars. The first one is directed at policy and finance and carbon reduction. Okay. And it's more from a government banker, scientist point of view. And then the second podcast follows a slightly different line, but more practical probably. And then the third one, it's a group of 3 farmers from different parts of Scotland who are already embracing the technology and what they have done in the last few years in their businesses to make them more sustainable. Okay,
so we're learning from their experience, and that's obviously the best way to learn, isn't it? And they also get a chance to have a bill around the farm, I think, don't they? I think Peter was saying there's a farm tours going on.
Always the centre point of these on-farm events is the farm tour, and showing, it's an opportunity not for you to show your business off, but it's an opportunity for farmers to be seeing what it's like on the other side of the fence.
Sure.
And I always find anyway that you always learn something, even if it's how not to do something rather than how to do it. So what suits one doesn't suit everyone.
No.
And there's a variety of things going on. Unfortunately, the late spring hasn't helped our grassland and crop demonstrations, because they're only just through the ground now. So in another month's time, there's not going to be a lot to see.
Sure.
But we're taking measures in hand, and we're going to bring out a podcast later in the summer when we've got more for people to see and results to give them to you.
Excellent. And how do I know? I mean, again, there's posters out there where this event is, but how do people go about getting tickets? Is there a limit on tickets? Can they turn up on the day and pick up tickets, or do people got to buy online?
There's no limit on tickets. Tickets are available online, and they can be bought on the day of the event.
Okay.
But there's a discount for tickets bought before the event.
Sure. Okay, that's worth having as well for you listeners out there, worth getting your tickets online, and then you can turn up and walk straight in as well instead of having to stand in the kiosk, so that's always useful.
Well, we try and make it that you do your best to try and make sure there's not a queue. I mean, we do not take the money till people get their cars parked, and it's while on their way into the event that they either have to display their ticket or purchase one.
Okay, and I believe that the trade stands seem to be split into various places. I didn't quite get an understanding of the layout. I was supposed to be at the meeting that you had a couple of weeks ago regarding press.
Well, there's different staying complexes, and the one where most of the cows are wintered is where we're having the display by the beef cattle societies.
Breed societies.
And that's 2 or 3 fields away from where the main display field is, and it's next to a steading that has that's going to have all the indoor stands in it.
Okay. And this podcast is sponsored by Harborough, and I know Harborough will be there in amongst where those breed stands are there, so make sure you drop in and see us. And talking of sponsors, I know Harborough are adding some sponsorship to the event there, but you've got 1 or 2 main sponsors there that make this thing tick, haven't you? Make this thing happen.
Yeah, well, we're very, very grateful to Virgin Money because they've supported all the beef events we've had, and they seem to be undeterred, and I think they're making good use of it to try and help move their business along, and get people in line, because that's one of the main changes that's going to come about. In banking regulation, there'll be conditions attached to lending money which haven't been attached before, and you'll have to show you're doing something sustainable, as I understand it, for funds for any expansion to be available at all.
That's very interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So you're saying that lending in the future could be based on the fact whether people are trying hard to reduce the carbon footprint and biodiversity.
Yeah, well, that's very much what's being looked at, and this is not a Virgin Money exclusive here. It seems to be very much to the forefront in all banking thinking at the moment. I mean, I think from what I hear here, it could be a treasury insistence.
Okay.
So it goes as high as that.
Up to the top.
Right to the top.
Okay. And with regards to sponsors I mentioned there, have you got a few more main sponsors we should give a shout out to there? I think you have got a list of them.
The other main sponsors we have, it's the first time we've had the benefit of their sponsorship, and that's NFU Mutual.
Okay.
And they're very much sponsoring the farm tour. They were keen to be involved with that. And of course, if NFU Mutual is pretty big in agricultural insurance. There's not many people certainly in this area anyway that if they're not using them, they certainly will have heard of them.
Sure, yeah, definitely one of the well-known ones there, and it's men like yourself and your committee that go out and get this sponsorship. It's unsung. I've been on committees myself, and it's one of the hardest jobs is going knocking on doors and getting sponsors in all the time because they've got requirements on their money everywhere and somewhere. But you believe, obviously, they must have come in believing they're gonna hit their target.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, we like to think that they're going to get value for money and from the sponsorship. So we've welcomed them all with open arms, and we've been very fortunate in the amount of sponsors we've been able to attract to the event.
Brilliant. Well, it's great work, and great work by yourself. I know these jobs aren't easy when you're trying to organise these events, especially when you said with issues like COVID and the late spring and everything coming along. And that's a credit to all of you to getting this event off the ground there, Scott. And just remind us, or we're going to remind ourselves, I suppose, that it's on Tuesday, the 6th of June at Dalswinton Estate, and there'll be plenty of parking and fairly easy access and well signposted. People, get yourselves down there.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things when we're looking for an event. It's very important about access, that you're not going to cause a huge headache for the traffic and for the police, and police were very happy with our arrangements. So fingers crossed it'll go swimmingly, and it'll be a day like today with beautiful sunshine for people to come out and have a nosy round.
Indeed. The weather plays a big part on these things, but I think in an event like this, it isn't about the weather, it's about people, the farmers coming along. Hey, when it's raining, they can go out because they're not working at home, so that sometimes plays in your favour too.
Well, that's it, and particularly for the livestock business, spring is a very crucial time and a very busy time, and I think everybody's ready for a day out, and just to see if there actually are other farmers out there.
Sure. No, it is brilliant, and we've started the Royal Show season just last week. So with the start of the show season and people getting their livestock out there, but that's a slightly different, as we said. This one's more specialist, and it's aimed at those beef farmers wanting to see an improvement and catch up with the latest legislation. So, Scott, I really thank you for your time chatting away to us just now, and your listeners out there. Hope you get yourself down there, and everybody have a great day.
Well, I'm certainly going anyway. I hope lots more people will come along, and hopefully we think it'll be an absolutely fantastic day.
Brilliant. Scott, thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tales, and as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Harborough. And if you are going to the Scottish Beef event, please get yourself down there and make yourself known to lovely people on the Harborough trade stand there, and tell them how much you enjoy Top Lines and Tales and how much we greatly value their continued support with this podcast. For more information on Harborough, please look them up on the internet, and likewise for more information on the Scottish Beef event, please gather some more of that from the internet as well, and don't forget, of course, to have a look at our Facebook page where you'll find more information, and we'll certainly be plugging this event.